Hi, my name is Tyler. This was supposed to be a reading vlog, and it is a reading vlog, but it also turned into my September wrap-up. So you will get my thoughts on the last little bit of things that I read in September, and then I will get into my wrap-up stats after. It is September 24th, and I am DNFing a book. I am gonna DNF An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon. I'm just really struggling with this book. I started it on the 17th, so that was over a week ago, and I still have not even read 100 pages. I'm just really struggling with this. Last night I considered picking the audiobook up again, but now it has been checked out, and I'm just not invested enough to keep fighting. And you know, I'm like 40% in, I think, and usually in a case like this I would keep pushing and be like, I'm so close to the end, it's under 300 pages, I just need to focus, I just need to work, I just need to push myself through this book. However, I really liked Sorrowland, and I just don't want to ruin my good feelings towards this author, and I'm just gonna accept that maybe this just isn't the book for me. I like the sci-fi element. However, I found myself just wanting to know more about the ship and why there are like these guards that are policing all the different levels of the ship, and I want to know why all the different levels of the ship are so heavily regulated. And then I eventually read some reviews last night and learned that this is supposed to be a slave narrative, you know, told in kind of like a sci-fi universe, which makes that all make sense. In the beginning, I thought I was struggling to follow the plot because I was distracted, because I was only reading a couple pages at a time. Sometimes that can be an issue where you're reading so slowly that you're not holding on to all the pieces the next time you pick up the book, if that makes sense. So I thought it was a me issue, and I guess it could still be a me issue, but I was having these issues even when I was reading for long stretches. It'd be like between paragraphs, I feel like I missed like 3 steps between the paragraph I just read and the paragraph I am currently reading. I'm not understanding how we're getting from here to here. And I just felt very confused. Like I just didn't understand what was happening sometimes. I didn't necessarily fully understand the choices Aster was making, and that comes to like the biggest issue. I just really didn't like the way Aster was written, I guess. Something about the character just kind of like rubbed me the wrong way, and the more I read it, the more annoying I found it. And I can't quite place what it was, but her mentor character Theo, I also had that kind of experience with. There was something that I felt like I was missing to make me connect to these characters, and I don't know what it was. And so I'm not gonna say this is a bad book. People love this book, and I think it is probably a great book, but there is just something that I was really struggling with this book, and I'm gonna DNF it. And maybe if I hear more about it later in the future, maybe I'll give it another go. Maybe if I read another Rivers Solomon book that I also really love, I'll give it a go then. I don't know, it's not a hard DNF. I'm not gonna say I hate it. It's nothing like that. I just was struggling so much with it at this point, and I respect the author so much that I am deciding to let it go at this point, because I personally don't want to give it a bad review. I don't want to rate it lowly because I liked Sorrowland so much. Does that make sense? Those reasonings why I am connecting them. I don't know, I feel like maybe my brain is just not there. and maybe it'll work better later, because even though I have that like knowledge about it being a slave narrative, which I feel like could help me like ground myself in the story a little bit more, when I picked it up again, I still just was like feeling resistance to reading this book. So I'm not gonna fight it. I'm gonna let it go, and maybe I'll read it again at some other point. So anyways, that's what I'm DNFing right now. Honestly, I have no idea if I'm gonna finish anything this week. So this might end up turning into my reading wrap up if this is all I do this week. Anyways, I will talk to y'all later. Bye. Howdy, it is September 25th. And I just finished listening to Trust the Plan by Will Sommer. This is a book about QAnon. Will Sommer has been tracking and reporting on QAnon since like the start. And this is his book about it. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I wish that it had been read by Will Sommer. It's a perfectly fine book. I feel like if you're like very deep into the QAnon lore and world, and if you've been tracking QAnon for a long time, if you listen to Will Sommer's podcast, or if you listen to like QAnon Anonymous or TrueAnon, is that one that also I would assume talks about QAnon? If you're like very deep into that, you're following people on Twitter and all that, I don't think this is going to offer a whole lot of new information to you, or if you have like a family member who has been kind of sucked into the QAnon world, I don't think this will offer a lot of new information to you. However, I would say I'm probably like more versed in QAnon than like the average person, but it's been more of a new interest of mine, you know, like in the last, I don't know, year or so. I started listening to QAnon Anonymous. I only listened to like the last month of Will Sommer's podcast before he switched publications and the podcast was ended. So I knew some of this. I knew a lot of like the very broad strokes, but there was still a lot that I didn't know. There were more details that I didn't know. So I feel like I learned stuff. I connected some things that I didn't fully know were connected to QAnon. I saw like what those connections between QAnon and certain extremist events were. So I enjoyed it. And if you've been interested in like learning more about QAnon but just don't know where to start, which like I can't blame you, it's like a rabbit hole, a wormhole. There's just like so much out there, and it is wild. I feel like this would be a good starting point for someone who is interested in learning about QAnon and just doesn't know where to start. I feel like it's a very good, comprehensive, overarching history of this idea of QAnon, talking about where it started, and kind of where it's at now. Anyways, so yeah, 4 stars, enjoyed it. Yeah, alright, I'll talk to you later. Greetings. It is September 30th, and I have finished 2 books since you saw me last. I finished a Yowamushi Pedal volume, so I think that was volume 10. There are 4 more that I personally own. I'm pretty sure finishes out the race that I'm currently reading. I have a feeling I should finish them next month. I'm going on vacation at the end of October, and I've purposefully slowed down my reading of Yowamushi Pedal so I can have a couple that I can just like devour during vacation. So those will get finished, and then I'll decide if I want to continue or not. If it moves into like new characters, I don't know if I'm going to continue or not, but we'll see how it goes. The other thing I finished was Pulling the Chariot of the Sun, a memoir of a kidnapping by Shane McCrae. This I listened to as an audiobook. Shane McCrae is a poet, so that's why I chose to listen to it, but I kind of wish I had just read it. I chose to listen to it because I do tend to find poetry more digestible in audio form, but this is kind of a mix of like prose and poetry. It's not a straightforward narrative. There's a lot of cyclical, I don't know, like it's repetitive but not in a bad way. Like it's a purposeful, metaphoric repetition. So sometimes it's like a certain memory that he talks about at the beginning of the book and then comes back to, or a phrase or memory that he's like working his way through within a chapter or a poem. I can't totally tell if there was like actual poetry like on the page. It would look like a poem or not, so I don't fully know what to call certain parts of what I listen to. But anyways, because of that like cyclical nature of it, on top of the fact that he moves a lot, and you know, part of the like crux of this is like dealing with his memory. Can he trust his memory? Things like that. So this repetition, this constant moving, this like going back and forth with himself about his memory actually got kind of confusing, especially because it's like difficult to go back in an audiobook. You just don't like have those landmarks like you do when you're reading to know where to go back to. Like you might not know the very specific page of what you're looking for, but like you just have this like physical idea of where in the book a thing you might be looking for is. And you just like don't have that with an audiobook. So that made it difficult, and I found myself zoning out listening to it more than I wanted to. It was only a 5-hour audiobook, but it just took forever for me to listen to. So I gave it 3.5. I rounded up to 4. I think my struggle reading it was definitely a me issue and not a book issue. I didn't talk about how like he's a biracial man. His mother is white, his dad is black, and his white grandparents kidnapped him basically, because they didn't want him to live with his black father. So that's kind of like what these memories that he's like working through and thinking about his childhood are about. Like figuring out his place, his history with this new knowledge and like looking at that, if that makes sense. Anyways, so it's the last day of September. I think I'm just going to do my wrap-up stats in this video because it's been kind of a shorter vlog. So I haven't done my stats yet though. So I will be back probably tomorrow with stats because I gotta get to tabulating and whatnot. So I will see you later with those. Bye. Hi, hello. I am back to wrap this puppy up. Like I said, it's the next day. So let's get to it. I finished 13 books this month. It is the lowest amount of books I've read in a month since January. Yeah, I am just reading a lot of long and slow things right now, and so just like a lot is not getting finished. But I am reading. I feel like I'm reading a lot actually, but it is what it is. Of those 13 books, 5 were audiobooks and 8 came from the library. I DNF'd 2 books. The Selected Works of T.S. Spivet is definitely a hard DNF, but An Unkindness of Ghost is more of a soft DNF. I didn't put it back on my TBR, but there's a non-zero chance that I will eventually read it at some point, or try to read it again at some point. As for my TBR stats, I read 5 off my Goodreads TBR shelf and 3 that I physically owned. So when we look at my TBR numbers, last month I was at 111 books on my Goodreads TBR. Today I am at 100. Yesterday was actually the end of the quarter, so I did my Goodreads clear out. So with the books that I read off both of my TBR, plus a little bit of cleaning up, I'm at a solid 100, which is really nice to see. Because the whole goal when I started keeping track of my TBR numbers was to get under 100, so I'm like right there. right there. And then my physical TBR went from 22 books to 19. So that's also moving in the great direction. I am working on 2 physical books right now. That's Frankenstein and Columbine. So those will get marked off the list hopefully next month. And then also when I go on vacation, there are 2 books I'm planning to bring with me that I bought specifically for spooky woods reading, cabin reading, and those are the Eric LaRocca book I bought specifically to read. That's a novella length, like it's not very long, so I definitely think I'll probably finish that on that vacation. And then I also have a like a essay collection called Body Horror that I will also bring with me on vacation. So those are 2 books that I plan on tackling on vacation next month. So my physical TBR is moving. I also bought 1 book this week. That was My Monticello by Jocelyn Moore Johnson. This is like a book about race and Thomas Jefferson, and I can't fully remember the plot, but it had interesting vibes. So those are my TBR stats. I didn't read any Indigenous authors this month, or Toni Morrison. It's the first time in a while that I haven't, so that's a little bit of a bummer. So hopefully I can fix that next month. It took me 8.3 days to read a book on average this month. That makes sense. Again, I have a lot of slow reads and then some quick reads as well. So like, yeah, it's been taking me a while to read some books this month. My ratings, no 1-star reads this month, 1 2-star read, 4 3-star reads, 4 4-star reads, and 4 5-star reads, and that puts me at 3.8. My ratings have been very high the last couple of months, and that's like 100% because I am reading Yowamushi Pedal manga volumes, and they all get 5 stars because I really do enjoy those quite a bit. They just give me all the good feels. So they all get 5 stars, and so that definitely brings the rating up when I have a consistent source of 5-star reads. The other 2 5-star reads I had were A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers, which was the Monk and Robot book. Wholesome, good, short novella, solar punk vibes. Really enjoyed that. But I have to say, What My Bones Know, a memoir of healing from complex trauma by Stephanie Fu, has to be my favorite book this month. It just has to. It just had a really profound effect on me, and just kind of put some things in place, put some pieces together for me when listening. So really enjoyed that. Would really recommend that if you're a person that has mental health struggles. It's specifically about like PTSD, complex PTSD, but I think it's valuable for a lot of people. So anyways, those were the best reads. The only 2-star read was Any Man by Amber Tamblyn, and yeah, that was probably definitely my least favorite book I read this month. Just taking a glance at anything else. Yeah, like I just didn't like it. I didn't have a good time reading it. I didn't enjoy it. I hated the Twitter chapter. Like, it was just not the vibe for me. So those are my least favorite and most favorite books that I read this month. I'll briefly touch on like TBR plans for next month. I already talked about the 2 Halloween-y books that I plan on reading when I go on vacation. I am still working on Columbine and Frankenstein, like I said. I'm reading Eileen by Otessa Moshfegh. Enjoying this, but it got pushed to the sides this weekend because I've been trying to do stuff this weekend and I just haven't had a chance to physically read it. I'm listening to Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong. I'm not sure how I'm feeling about this. This is like a fantasy, urban fantasy, I guess, that involves like people being able to jump into different bodies, and there's kind of like a, I want to describe it as Hunger Games, like people are going into this like battle to win money and like I don't know. I'm not fully invested yet, but we'll see. So those are the things I'm currently reading. I can't really think of anything else that I'm like planning on reading besides those 2 Halloween books that I had talked about. I have some stuff on hold, so we'll see what comes up. But that is kind of what I'm working on, what's in the foreseeable future. Yeah, I will talk to y'all next week. Bye.